Welcome to Hanging at the Hangar Bar. I'm Scott.
I'm Candace.
I'm Lariah.
And I'm Lacey. Grab a drink and come hang with us at the Hangar Bar.
Welcome to season 2 of Hanging at the Hangar Bar. We are super excited to be here. Yay!
Yay!
So we have lots of fun things planned this year that we're going to be talking about, and we've so many emails and messages going back and forth of things that we want to talk about. So we're excited to be releasing our next season today and going to talk about planning a Disney trip with one person who's not so much into Disney and the other person that may be going that's super into Disney and the things that they may need to think about. But before we get there, I'm going to share something with this group that you may not know yet. We hit our first 500 listens of our first season of podcast yesterday.
Woo!
Woo!
How exciting is that?
So exciting.
Only 499 of them were me. No, so thank you to all who have listened. I joke that it's all me, but no, it's 500 listens is a milestone for a group of people that just wanted to sit back and kind of record our conversations about Disney. Seeing 500 listens come across our podcasting app, I was blown away. I'm super excited about all of that. So the other thing that as we get into this discussion today was actually formed by one of our listeners. So as listeners of our podcast, this is just to let you know, if you have something you want us to talk about, we love getting ideas from you. We have lots of really cool things planned. A couple of our topics are from listener asked questions. Let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Candace, why don't you start us off kind of with the theme for the day?
Okay. Well, the first thing we're going to talk about today is planning a trip as a Disney adult. Of course, when you have children in tow, there are a lot of different things that you need to consider when you're planning a trip to Disney. But when you're an adult, that kind of relaxes a little bit and amps up a little bit all at the same time. So our question comes to us, and it is advice for a casual Disney fan who's setting up a first-time Disney trip with a Disney Fanatic partner. Is going with friends advised? Suggested length of the trip? Must see, must ride for the first go around? What extra passes would you suggest? Obviously, use a travel agent, but what information should you have ready for them? And what would you suggest staying on the resort for the whole trip? And that's it.
Good questions.
Great questions.
Yeah. So Jackson, shout out to Jackson. He's the one that asked this series of questions. He is the first time casual Disney fan. When he gets around real Disney fans, he gets exposed a little bit, but that's okay. We love Jackson. So let's start with the first one. Actually, let's just start at the top of that. So what advice would you give that casual Disney fan that has maybe somebody like us as a partner that knows everything Disney, stays up to date on it? What advice would you give that person that's just a little trepidatious about going? Is that even a word?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Trepidatious about going.
I guess I would use the same advice that I use for anyone that's going, hardcore fan or not. You are not going to be able to do everything, and you are not going to be able to see everything. So going in with expectations of doing what you're going to enjoy, picking out those things that you and the people that you're going with are really going to make memories out of, rather than just checking it off your list, I think is super important.
I agree with that. Also, just going in with no expectations too would probably be a really good idea, just because I know for my first time going, I didn't have very high expectations just because I've been to theme parks before, and having no expectations made my experience so much better than I think it would have been if I went in and looked up everything there is to do. Just go with an open mind, and like Candace said, if you see something you want to do it.
Yeah, I would say just be really open to exploration. And because like if you go into Disney World and you're by yourself and you're not really a fan, I guess you can easily turn it into a Universal trip. And so sorry, Candace, But that's why we need people like you and your expertise. And going with a Disney fan really opens your eyes to all the magic that can happen.
Yeah, so Lariah, your first trip was in 2019, and I know you've always been kind of a big Disney movie fan and that kind of thing. But you said something at one point that I think speaks to that really well. You said you didn't go in and watch a lot of videos and that kind of thing just because you wanted to let it come at you, right?
Yep. I wanted to see it with my own eyes.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I think you run the risk if you're going with somebody who's a Disney fanatic, you run the risk of building up expectations so high. I think to your point, Lacey, that you were trying to make, if you take and build up those expectations so high about the quality of service, the quality of food, the quality of whatever, that's through your eyes. That person who's just a casual fan is going to get there and expect perfection. And we all know any Disney trip is not always perfection, but it's what you do in those moments of not perfection that make it perfect.
And I will also say, coming from the other direction, from being a Disney fanatic and going with somebody that's never been before, there are expectations that I have that I want to make sure that new person experiences. And if they don't, it gives me anxiety like you would not believe. Like for Lariah's first trip, I'm like, oh, well, we're not going to plan this every minute by minute, but I want to make sure she sees this and this and this and this. And come to find out, we missed the tiki room. Hello.
It was still perfect. It was everything I dreamed of. But I didn't have any
better if you would have seen the tiki room.
Well, next time. I always say that. Gotta be excited.
I know.
And I think that's so true. Like, if you're going as a casual fan, I think if you go into it with the right mind frame, you're going to come out of it going, when am I coming back? When's my next time? I didn't get to see everything. So what am I going to do? How am I going to make that plan for the next one? What am I going to prioritize for that next trip? You quickly become a fanatic.
And I think that's so true. When I was helping folks plan trips back in the day, I had a client who, she loved Disney movies. She'd been a Disney fan her whole life and had never been to one of the theme parks. And she's like, what is it with you? You're weird. All you do is talk about Disney. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't know till you know. And to know, you have to go to the parks. And she's like, whatever. So I arranged a trip for them. And it was she and her husband and their 2 kids. Their littlest one was like 8 months old when they took the kids. And she came home and she's like, I totally get it. I'm going to talk Disney for the rest of my life. And as far as I know, they've gone every year that they could since then. Because it just becomes, I don't know what it is. It just becomes like a pilgrimage of sorts.
I like that. So as you're planning a trip, what do you think for that casual Disney fan is the best way to experience Disney? Like the question was, is going with friends advised? So basically riffing off of that question, what makes the trip for somebody who's a casual fan going with somebody who's a fanatic?
I think any trip to Disney, unless it's like a honeymoon or something like that, where, you know, the focus is on the 2 of you. I think any plan or any trip to Disney is a good trip to Disney if there are more people involved, because it is fun to share those memories with the people that you travel with and good friends. However, I will say that I think it's a good idea, if possible, to kind of split your days up. Like you and your partner do something and then get together with the whole group for dinner and drinks to discuss what you did during the day, so that you've each got your own expert or experience times on your own and are not being dragged to things that maybe you really don't care about. Because I know there's, you know, lots of that in Disney. And if some people go do that, great. And then you can decide if they think it's fabulous, if you want to do that yourself.
I agree with you, Candace. And I know we discussed this too for a next trip that the 4 of us will take, that we want to try to do that more, where we split up our day is a little bit longer, but then at least once a day we'll meet up for lunch or dinner or something like that and kind of just talk about our days. Because the fun thing about Disney is that, and we've discussed this before, that it's, you make it how you want it to be. If you're not a rides person and you're more of like, you want to go and do like some wine tasting or drink around the world or something like that, they will cater to what you're wanting to do, as long as you know what you want a trip to be. If you want it to be on the more relaxing side, you can do that at Disney. But then there are other people who are more rides people and who would love waiting in line for a ride. And if you're not crazy about a ride that you want to, that it's like a 60-minute wait, and you're thinking, I would much rather be at a bar right now drinking, a cocktail, then that's when, that's like you said, Candace, when you split up, you wouldn't have to be wasting your time if you were doing your own thing that way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because Disney time is precious. I don't know how they do it, but it goes super fast. You can spend 12, 13, 15 hours in a park and feel like maybe you didn't accomplish everything that you wanted to, just because time goes so fast. And especially if you're waiting in line and waiting for experiences and things like that, that time just flies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, to going back a little bit to the Disney fanatic versus the casual fan, letting that Disney fanatic, like if you're going as a couple, letting them tell you what's important to them. Because Candace, what would your trip be like if I'm less Disney than you and I'm like, no, I don't want to do any of those rides. No, I don't want to go on the People Mover. I don't want to do this. I just want to go sit in a bar and drink. That is going to be a good way to end up not in a relationship if you're not careful, right? So just,
It is.
you have to have some of that conversation before you go of what's important to you. So as the casual Disney fan, what do you connect to about Disney? If you call yourself a casual fan, what movies do you connect to? What are the things that you've heard about that you like? And then going to that Disney fanatic and say, what are the 5 things that if we don't do in Magic Kingdom, you're going to throw me off the bus?
And I think some of that too is being open to new experiences and new adventures. Because even like on our last trip in 2019, Lariah, when you were there with us, that was my first time on Expedition Everest. That was my first time on Big Thunder Mountain, just because I'm not so much a roller coaster person. And yet you tell me I can't go on Haunted Mansion or the People Mover or Spaceship Earth or something like that. I don't want to talk to you. But opening myself up to having those different experiences really enhanced the trip. And I can safely say, after one trip and one time on it, Expedition Everest is now a must do for me, just because it shifted my perspective so much.
Even though the Disco Yeti jumped out at you?
It terrifies me, but it's fun.
He's very important to the story.
He is.
So, Lariah, how did you discover what your must-dos were before our trip? Like, was it in conversations with Lacey or with Candace and I? How did you decide what your must-dos were?
I just listened to all of your suggestions and was just very open. Have always been very engaged in all of our conversations in general, but especially our Disney conversations. And Disney World has been something I've wanted to do my whole life, and I can't say that for everybody. But Lacey she still to this day talks about her first trip and stuff, and I have just always been so entranced by Disney and Disney World, and you guys just talk so many things up. And upon that, I've also done my own research based on your recommendations for YouTube channels, even just going on the Disney website. And I guess I was just you have to be really interested. If you're not really interested in Disney and you still want to go, but make sure it's with somebody who knows what they're doing, because you're not going to find the magic if you're uninterested, basically. But
And that's
Yeah,
a lot of money to pay for not being interested in something. A lot.
Oh goodness. Yeah. But I feel like it's one of those things where it's like kind of a FOMO thing, kind of where it's so hyped up that everybody just wants to do it, even if they're not totally interested. Anyways, but yeah, I just honestly, I did a lot of research and I have been blessed with 3 of the biggest Disney fans I know in my life. So I really got to step up to really find, and even you guys have always been like, so what do you like? Like before planning our trip, Candace, you were like, who's your favorite character? Like, what's this? And then you planned our trip to Ohana. Like, and I, like, you have to be a Disney fan and do your research, like, at least of the movies, basically, if that made sense.
Completely.
Okay.
Well, and those little bits of additional knowledge are what makes the magic.
Yeah.
Because, like, getting that reservation for Ohana was a happy accident. But I think you getting to meet Stitch and Lilo just kind of, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that kind of made your trip.
It really did. I knew that I really wanted to meet characters because that would just fill a childhood dream of mine. And like we said before, don't be afraid to act like a child when meeting your favorite characters because they're really inspirations for my life, especially Stitch. He's my biggest. No, but yeah, it was just perfect. And yeah.
So one of the questions asked is, I think we'll come back to suggested length of trip. What are the must-see and must-do things for your first trip? Lariah, I'm going to start with you again, just because your first trip is the most recent one. What were those things that you went into it saying, I have to do these things?
Okay, well, the number one was fireworks. Definitely. Specifically in Magic Kingdom.
Well, it's just like it's
honestly, I didn't even know that Epcot had fireworks when I went in. So that was a nice surprise.
Surprise!
But yeah, the fireworks definitely. And I did honestly look up one ride through before we went, and it was Expedition Everest. And I only got to the part where the track like gets ripped off, and then I was like, I had to stop the video because I was like, I cannot wait to ride this ride, and I do not want to spoil myself. So, like, Expedition Everest was honestly a must do. And so, yeah, that one. But I didn't really look up any restaurants because I'm not a picky eater at all. And I pretty much trusted everyone else because it's very hard to like look up a restaurant and know what you're getting into. Kind of like it's kind of hard to research the restaurants.
Well, they just have so many restaurants.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's very hard to pick and to like spoil yourself. But I knew we were going to do Disney Springs, but I knew I wanted to do Disney Springs. I think that is a must do for every Disney trip. But yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to add Disney Springs for those Disney adults. I think it becomes even more must do. If you have little kids in tow, I think Disney Springs seems like probably an overpriced shopping mall. Whereas if you go as an adult, there's 15 or 20 different restaurants, high-end shops that all have Disney merch, and there's different things that you can do. And heck, you could do a bar crawl in Disney Springs. Okay, I just put something on my next to-do list is let's do a bar crawl. Like, okay, so for those of you that may be casual Disney fans that don't know if you're going to like Disney, but you know you like to drink, you can do a bar crawl everywhere. There's a monorail bar.
Should we save that for our next episode?
Should we save that for another episode?
Yeah, the beers and ears episode.
Okay, yeah.
Hunting around the world.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm getting ahead of myself.
Slow down.
Listen to the next one. We'll talk about all the different ways you can drink at Disney, but there's lots of different ways you can drink at Disney, which is a ton of fun if you're a drinker. And if you're not a drinker, you can do a cake crawl, do a dessert crawl, or an appetizer crawl, or a whatever crawl that you want to do at Magic Kingdom, at the monorail, at each resort, at whatever you want to do. Heck, you could do it by value.
You could do a Dole Whip crawl.
Yeah. There's lots of people thinking right now. That's so yeah, we'll get back to more of the drinking a little bit, but it's not a place to go just for little kids. I think sometimes when you think Disney parks and Disney rides, you think it's just little kids. Lacey, you and I's one of our favorite rides, that stupid Pooh Bear ride, is one of my favorite things to do in all of Magic Kingdom. And if somebody would have described that to me beforehand, and me, like, Pooh Bear's my number one. He's my ride and die. So if somebody would have described that ride to me, I'd be like, that would ruin Pooh Bear for me. I don't want to do it. And now I'll push kids out of the way for the honey wall. It's just the way it is. There's little things like that I think is a casual fan, because before I went to Disney, I think I fit more into that casual fan role. Candace kind of dragged me kicking and screaming into Disney fanaticism. But I was more of that casual fan. But it's hard to get there without just, I think, Lariah, you said it, being open to those new experiences and open to just go and let things happen as they happen. If you over plan a trip, you're going to have a miserable time.
Yeah. Yeah. Just trust your Disney expert. Really trust your Disney expert, because that's one key. They know what they're doing.
And Scott, I will remind you that Living with the Land was very much the same way, where I all but had to drag you kicking and screaming onto that for the first time, saying, I don't want to look at a bunch of greenhouses. We're in Disney World. Let's go do something fun. And I made you ride it, and you're like, every time, it's a must do. And we need to eat at Garden Grill, because the stuff that's grown in the greenhouse, they serve at Garden Grill. Let's go.
Yep. Very true. Okay. So let's get into that question. What are the must-see, must-rides for a first-timer? What would each of us call out as something that you would have to do for your first-time trip?
Jungle Cruise.
Why?
Just because it's one of the OGs. I think those are important to do. So,
agreed. Lariah?
Honestly, this one is going to kind of shock you all, but I would say it's a Small World, just because it's a Disney original, a Walt original, and it's very... I'm not a fan of that ride, but it's very important to the park, and I did it, and I don't have to do it again. Oh, it's a first time, come and gone. Okay.
Yep. Candace, how about you?
Oh dear. I think anything that sort of, I'm the deep Disney nerd in this group, so anything that gets us back to where Disney has come from. So It's a Small World, Carousel of Progress, Jungle Cruise, anything that Pirates of the Caribbean, anything that Walt had a direct influence on. And I think it's also very, very important that people take note of the details and the theming and the atmosphere, and not just the next thing that you're going to ride on. Because that's what sets Disney apart from anything else.
Yeah, that you sort of stole what I was going to say is my must-see, must-do. My must-see, must-do is the detail. Don't put your head down and walk past all the windows on Main Street, USA, and not recognize that they're the height that they are so kids can look into them. Take notice of, if you go down this little walkway where nobody ever turns right. If you just sort of make a little trip back there, you can hear a piano lesson or a singing lesson happening. Seek out finding something that you don't think other people have done. Seek out an experience that not everybody gets to do. An example of that for me is every time we are in Animal Kingdom and we are in Africa, Candace and I stop and we pay attention and we watch the Harambe dancers, the drummers. And 2 times now we have gotten called up to do a dance with them. And as I think about that experience, me just sort of, if we would say no to that experience, we would just be observers and not participants in our own vacation. And to me, it's so important to participate in some of those things. And when you think about it, they pull up 5 people at a time. They do that 10 times a day. So there's 100,000 people in that park a day, and 50 of them get to dance with the Harambe dancers in a day. That's an experience that not everybody gets to have. And those are the kind of things that I absolutely love. The other kind of bit of advice that I would give to people going is that the photo pass is worth the money. So I'm interested to see if Lacey and Lariah will agree or disagree with that. But let me give my reasoning first, and then I'll ask. I think photo pass is worth the money because then you can, if you're going as a couple or a group of friends, you can both be in the pictures. They have professional photographers that do all of that work for you. They have the magic shots that you can do different things. You get all your ride photos as part of that package. And Candace, correct me if I'm wrong, that's like $100 for the entire group, or is it $100 per person?
No, it's added to the reservation. So it depends on the reservation. So if there's a group of people, it would be like $139 pre-purchase on every reservation. So every room.
Okay. So for every room, it's a cost generally. So whoever's in that room or whatever is included in that pass. But I think that is so worth the money. And those photographers are everywhere. So Lacey and Lariah, I don't think you used the photo pass as much as Candace and I do. What's your take on the photo pass? I'm just interested.
I think out of all of the photos that are taken, my favorite ones are the ride ones, and I think they are worth it for the ride pictures alone. I look back on those all the time, and I think they are the funniest things. So if you have a good sense of humor and you don't care to make a funny face in a picture, then I think it's worth it because those photos are the best kinds. Like all of us riding on Splash Mountain. And then even with some rides, there are special features where some of the Disney characters will come on there, or it'll be not animated, but a short clip, like a video. And I think for that reason alone, it's worth it. Those are fun.
I think it's like the best souvenir you could probably invest in because it captures all of some of your very best moments, I think. And also keeps you off of your phone for a little bit.
Yep.
Taking pictures and stuff because they're all around. They're literally everywhere. You just stop and get your picture taken with your friends, and they include Disney characters in them. And It's decorated. It's perfect.
One of my favorite photos of Lacey of all time is a photo pass picture of her with Baymax.
Yeah, I love that picture.
Like if you look through all of our pictures, like to me, I hope this doesn't sound bad, but Lacey just doesn't always look like she enjoys getting her picture taken. But that picture with Baymax, it was like, take all the pictures you want. I'm here. I'm happy. This is a perfect day. And they just captured such a moment that I felt was like such a special moment that we probably wouldn't have captured in the same way.
Yeah. That was a good time.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't know is if you have something special that you want a picture of, like say for an example, a proposal or something like that, you can find a photo pass photographer and work specially with them to kind of get everything set up before you're doing what you're doing. However, with something like a proposal or something like that, it may not hurt to call Walt Disney Photography and see if you can prearrange some of that, because on the off chance that every single PhotoPass photographer in that specific area is on break, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and I think if you go through the photography, this is trivia time with Candace. That calling Walt Disney photography, and yes, Candace, we are going to record that song at some point, and I'll insert it into this spot. So, but if you call Walt Disney photography, they have packages where you can do like a half an hour with a PhotoPass photographer. So even if you want it to be a surprise, like, hey, I want to do it here, they'll show up early, kind of clear that spot for you, make it seem more magical than it really is. Disney will go out of their way. That's probably a pretty spendy proposition, but if you want it, that you can do it. Okay, so first timer length of trip. What's the right number? We have
7 days, 6 nights.
Candace says 7 days, 6 nights. We have some different things. So my first Disney trip was a 1 night, 2 park experience before a cruise. Lacey, you had 2 days in the parks before a cruise. And Lariah, you had 5 days, right? 5 days, 6 nights. So Candace, you said 7 days, 6 nights. Tell us why.
Okay, because, and again, this depends, but for the way that we vacation, we have always intended to use the park hopper pass. And this last trip, the 2019 trip, was actually the first time we've ever hopped. There is so much to do in the theme parks that you really need to do some soul searching to determine whether or not that park hopper is going to be of use to you, because you don't need to pay for it if you're not going to use it. And quite honestly, there's enough in every single one of the parks to keep you there all day. But so that's 4 theme parks. So 4 days are taken care of. Then if you want to do a water park or something, that's an extra day. Or you can use that extra time to rest, relax, explore the resorts, do the other things on property that don't involve a theme park.
And Candace, would you say resort the whole time?
Absolutely.
Stay on property?
Absolutely.
Okay. Lacey, Lariah, what do you think?
I agree with what Candace said. Did you say 7 days, 6 nights? Is that what you said? Is that possible? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because you'd be getting there in the afternoon, leaving in the morning. So okay. 6 nights. Yeah.
Sorry.
Math is hard.
I'm just kidding.
Yes, just because you need to leave room for a day of just kind of relaxing, at least 1 day. And if you want to go to all 4 parks, or if you want to go to, if there's a park that you really, really, really want to go to, and you kind of are in that mindset where you want to do as much as you can, then definitely go to that park multiple days if you would like. And if there's a park you're uninterested in, then maybe don't go to it on your first trip. I don't know. But I agree with Candace, just because you really need to have at the very least 1 off day, because it's a lot. There's a lot of walking involved. There's a lot of things to do. It's overwhelming. It's exhausting. So you need to have at least 1 off day to just, pool day, stay in your resort and just order food in and watch movies all day. Whatever you do to relax, you need that off day.
I would say 1 day and 1 night less. I think I would have, for the first trip, it would be perfect to do, I would have added 1 day to my first trip. So what, 6 days, 5 nights? Because it is very overwhelming for the first time. A lot of walking, a lot of focus at Disney World. Okay.
Lots of stuff to do.
Lots of stuff to do. And it can I'm someone who gets very overwhelmed very easily. So maybe that's just me, but it is a lot. and you need to plan for those off days. As many days as you're doing, just it's important to plan for, like, because I think one off day was perfect for us. But yeah, I think it just needs to be a little bit of a shorter trip for your first time, just so you can know what you do for your next trip. Because you go once, you're gonna want to go again. There's no way around that. So it was perfect to like gather all your interest and to like pace yourself, I guess.
Yeah, I completely agree, Lari. I was actually thinking the way I would probably do Lacey's first trip as my first trip. So the first time we went was, Candace, we did just what, Magic Kingdom or Epcot?
Epcot.
And then, yeah, we did Epcot and just went straight to the cruise ship from there. And in my mind, that wasn't enough. But I think I would have been okay just doing like a Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and then getting on a cruise ship or doing something different. So I think you can do it less and leave yourself wanting more. Especially if you're not sure you're going to like it, go with the idea that you're going to just be open to whatever experience comes. Come up with a list of must-dos for you and whoever you're going with. And I think you can do that in a couple days. For those of us that have been trying to narrow something down to a 2-day trip gets hard because our list of must-dos is longer than somebody who's never been there before. So I would say if you're planning it, like our friend here is going with somebody who's a Disney fanatic, they're probably going to end up with a longer trip just because that Disney fanatic person is going to want to do a bunch more things. But I think if you have a beach trip planned after or something like that where you can relax, I'm fine with just a couple of days being your first trip. Leave yourself wanting more. Okay, so we are just about at time, but there's one other question that I want us to talk about here is with the new Genie Plus coming out, what are the extras that you, other than PhotoPass, we talked about that a little bit, what are the extras that you would suggest a newbie to the parks purchasing?
Dining plan when it comes back.
Tell us why.
Because I think it's really nice to be able to just kind of pre-plan for your meals and know that when you get there, you can have pretty much whatever you want on the menu. And not have to worry about taking any extra money other than for tip.
And extra drinks.
Well, yes.
That's important.
And souvenirs and all that. But as far as taking care of your food, I think it's a nice thing to do. And especially with all the snack credits and stuff that any of the plans offer. If you leave Disney World on any of the dining plans and you are the slightest bit hungry, you are definitely not doing something right.
Okay. For me, I think knowing what I know, the little bit that I know about Genie Plus and Lightning Lane, I would budget a little bit to get on those fancy rides that you want to get on. So, for example, getting on Rise of the Resistance or getting on Remy's Ratatouille Adventure and spending the $10 or $11 to guarantee yourself a spot, I think that would be an add-on that would be worth it. I'm not 100% convinced that I would buy a Genie Plus for any of the parks at this point. I'm fine waiting in lines. I'm fine with the queues. I don't know that it's worth the extra money. I'll try it for a day and see how it goes, but I would definitely say plan a little bit extra money for those must-do rides that you feel like you have to get on.
I agree with that, Scott. And I don't think that you're going to, I mean, maybe you will. I'm specifically speaking right now to the person who asked this question. I think that you might not want to ride a ride by just researching it. I don't think you're going to want to do it until you're there. And so I think that's a really good idea because I know in our situation where we all went to Galaxy's Edge on a whim, and we didn't have any intention of riding
Smuggler's Run.
Yeah, we had no intention of riding it until we were right there. And you're kind of, because Disney just has this way of like pulling you in and influencing you, and you go in thinking, I'm not going to ride any ride, and you go in and you're waiting in line for a ride and you're like, I want to ride this ride.
Yeah,
because it's just so, it pulls you in. But I agree with you, and then I agree with Candace too. I think the dining plan is the most genius thing they've ever come up with, because even when we went on a cruise, not worrying about spending the money on food is just it's nice to know it's all taken care of except for the tip. But I would say it's not really a extra add-on with the app or anything like that, but I would save money back to take advantage of the minivan program service that they have going on, especially if you are a person who doesn't like to wait in lines or be crowded in a bus. If that's something that you would rather spend the money on, like your own ride somewhere, then take advantage of that service.
Yeah, and the minivan service is not currently operating, but I'm hopeful they'll bring it back.
Oh,
they haven't sold off the vans yet, as far as I know. But when COVID struck, they didn't want their cast members in cars with people with COVID.
Understandable.
I would say the after hours. I think you are not going to regret it. There's no way you would regret doing that, and it's the perfect little additive.
So would you suggest the after hours the way we did it, or the after hours like different holiday parties, or both?
I think the way we did it was perfect. Like, it kind of sent us out of the park with a bang. And it was really nice to do it after I had already gone to Magic Kingdom, though, as a first timer. So I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what to spend my time doing, how to plan it out.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. We've been here almost an hour now for what I thought was going to be a half-hour episode. So great discussion, but I think we'll end it here. Stay tuned for the next one. Again, welcome back. We appreciate you listening to our podcast, and stick with us. We have a lot of really exciting things planned over the coming months that we'll be sharing with you. What was that?
Hit us up on Instagram.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram at Hanging at the Hangar Bar, Facebook at Hanging at the Hangar Bar. We post both places very regularly. Interact with us there. Let us know what questions you have, or just let us know what you think of the podcast, just in general. Are there things that you like, things you don't like? We want to hear from you. And so we'll end it there. So as always, have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
See you real soon.